are co-chairs of. Um, I assume everybody can hear me.
Yes.
Okay. Future Directions Committee was looking for a webinar that we could bring up that would be very interesting and helpful to students as they go through their career, starting their career from academics going into industry. And so we went out and we found three panelists, which will introduce themselves here in a minute. But Brendan Wappler, who is will be the first one up. Basically, was with Synergy Flavors as a technologist. Second one will be Martha Kaysen. Martha's VP at ACH Foods, and then Megan Osterholtz, who is with Cargill. They will be speaking today about their career, what they saw when they went from academics to industry, and hopefully give you some good pointers on what you should be looking at as you do that similar move. So, with that, I'll turn it over to Brandon, and he can explain his career to date.
Yeah.
Brendan?
Yep. Thanks, Tom. So my name is Brendan Wampler. So I've been at Synergy Flavors for a little over a year now. So what really brought me to the food industry was my family. I've had several uncles and an aunt actually in the food industry. So in different, various roles. One was an entrepreneur, another one in sales, and then my aunt is in sensory science. So we're kind of all over the board. So I have my master's in and bachelor's from Ohio State University. My first job in development role was at Newlyweds Foods. So there I spent 2.5 years doing batter and breading for fried food. From there, I went to Imbibe Inc. in Niles, Illinois, where I did total beverage development. So anything in the beverage aisle was something that Imbibe was working on. So it's a R&D and flavor house combined. From there, always had a passion to get back to Ohio. So I joined Abbott Nutrition for last spent 6.5 years there. And then in April of last year, joined Synergy Flavors. So all the while doing R&D applications work.
Thank you. Thank you, Brendan.
Yep.
Martha, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, Tom. Thank you. Brandon, I find the family connection very interesting, and I think I'll get to that same point here in just a minute. So I'm Martha Cassins, and I'm the Vice President of Product Innovation, Development, and Quality for ACH Foods. And you probably haven't heard of ACH Foods, but what I would tell you is we're quite proud. We work in the oil and baking industry, and we have 4 products that are the #1 sellers in the country. And that would be Mazola corn oil, Caro syrup, Fleshman's yeast, and Argo starch. So I'm hoping you all have that in your pantry or your family pantry as where you go. I've been with ACH just over coming up on 11 years in October. And I think I'm going to go back to the first part of the question. What got me interested in the food industry? And I tell you that it started from a very early age. I've always been passionate about food. I like to eat food. I find it interesting. And I was also obviously influenced from my father, who worked at the University of Wisconsin. He had a lot of graduate students. He had visiting professors, and they came from all over the world. And part of the passion around food was invite them home, invite them to your home. So if it was summer, they came for a barbecue. If it was the fall, we were doing fall vegetables. What is a turkey? You need to know these American traditions. And as my parents got to know the visiting professors or graduate students, eventually it would get to a point of, we'd love to know more about your culture, your cuisine. What do you cook? What do you enjoy? And if the timing was right, my parents would say, well, we'd love to learn how to make that product. And so my parents would buy all the ingredients. We'd stand in our kitchen, all of us around the kitchen, watching what was going on. And so whether it was sushi or French pate, passion for food just kept growing and growing and growing. And I really appreciated that. I also got the opportunity at a young age to go to the university pilot plant with my father. And, you know, whether it was making French breakfast sausage or bratwurst, it was just, it was a passion from an early age. So I was fortunate. Going into high school, I knew what I wanted to study. Going into college, I knew what I wanted to study, and that was to be in the food industry. If I take a step back and I think about my first job was with Vienna Sausage. Freshly graduated an undergraduate degree. Very simply, I had 3 offers on the table, and I only tell you that because I took the lowest paying job, but the job I thought I would get the most experience at. And it was loaded with experience, and it really gave me an eye-opening opportunity. I also knew that I probably needed to go on. So I was fortunate that while I was working at Vienna Sausage, I was also able to work on my master's, one class at a time. So I'm one of those people that didn't do their undergraduate, master's, PhD. In fact, I never got my PhD. I did my undergraduate and my master's degree. From Vienna Sausage, I decided, well, private, small company with tons of experience. I wanted some corporate world experience. And at that point, I joined Armour Swift Eckrich. Today, you would know them as ConAgra, and brands like Butterball and Healthy Choice. There, I worked on retail, I worked on food service, I worked on deli projects. So I had a breadth of different experiences that I could launch into. And then I moved on to Sara Lee. Brands there would be Hillshire and Jimmy Dean. And then that kind of brought me into the ACH realm. I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that I did my undergraduate and my master's work at the University of Illinois. I had a degree in meat science and a specialization in a meat and process, a food science degree with a specialization in meat and processing. So that's just a little bit of my background and where I've gotten to where I am today. So with that, I think, Megan, you're next.
Yeah, and I'll tell you all a little bit about myself. My name is Megan Osterl, and I am at Cargill now, and Cargill is one of the biggest family-owned food companies in the world. So most of you, we are a back of house or B2B company, but our brands you'd see out in market would be Truvia or Diamond Crystal Salt. We employ 155,000 employees in 70 different countries. So we're a big player in the food industry. So most people have heard of Cargill. Well, my first job out of college wasn't at a big player. I worked for a small canning company for 4 months. And when I came out of college, I was the first college educated woman outside of the outside of the accounting department in that company. So I had a very different experience. And we'll get into that a little bit deeper into this conversation. But why food for me was my parents, between the two of them, have 5 degrees from Ohio State. So I was told I was going to Ohio State. It was not a question of where I wanted to go to school. It was, you will go to Ohio State and you will do something in the College of Agriculture. So when touring the College of Agriculture, we were touring the Ohio State, the Parker Food Science building, and we were in the basement, and somebody's lab work was on listeria in food. And they were talking about how the research they were working on was going to touch 1 million lives every single day. And I've taken that forward with me every single day in the food industry, that as a food scientist, as a food safety person, we touch food every single day. So I have spent my entire career in the food quality space, except for a little 4-month internship in there where I thought I liked product development and was like, nope, I'm going back to quality. And so I spent the last 10 years here in Cargill doing supplier quality evaluation for suppliers, mostly based in our FSVP space, or foreign supplier verification program. So being very intimate with the regulations. I have a bachelor's degree from Ohio State, and then I also have my yellow belt and green belt in Lean Six Sigma, rather than going into the master's program. And we'll get into that a little bit later too.
Okay. Thank you. And as you can see, we have a pretty diverse group of panelists here with quite wide-ranging backgrounds. In looking at that background, Can you speak, and I'll go to Brendan first on that. Can you speak on your transition going from academics into industry and any pointers for those people out there on what you did well or what you would have done differently as you went through that transition? Brendan?
Yes. So when I graduated from my undergrad in 09, the economy had tanked. So then I went straight back into my master's. So it was one of those things of, after my master's program, I didn't really have much R&D experience. I had one internship. So it was sort of a rougher transition to get into like the pace of actual real world development. So the internship I had, it was quicker pace, but just being out of it for so long and only having one. So my recommendation would be to definitely, you know, do several. You know, it's not from lack of trying. It was just stars didn't align for me during my application process for internships. And then one of the things that really helped me excel when I got to Imbibe was grabbing a mentor. And it just so happened to be my manager who really helped shape and form me into the product developer that I am today. So I think going forward and looking back is have a mentor that is there to guide you and help you through the everyday, and just there to ask questions and just watch you perform and then give you pointers and help you evolve into just being better every day.
I couldn't agree more with the importance of internships. I had 2 internships in undergrad and then went into a full-time job that I really was miserable in because of being the only college educated woman and them not really taking me seriously. I said, well, we pay you salary, so you're here whenever the lights are on. If we want you to be here 90 hours a week, that's what we expect you to be here. So coming out of college into a job that they wanted me there 90 hours a week, I was really shocked. So that didn't last very long. And I went back and I actually came to Cargill as an intern. So when I talk about going back and being an R&D intern, I left a full-time job with benefits to be an intern to get into a company that I knew was going to treat me well. So I think that's another thing when you're going into industry, is to look at all of that and not think, oh, everybody's going to treat me great. You may have experiences or moments where you're not going to get treated great when you look at the whole journey, and you need to look at that as part of it and be accepting that that's part of the journey too. As I had an epic 2 wonderful internships I was treated wonderfully on. So I just thought any food company I was going to walk into was going to treat me great. And I was really surprised by my first job out of college, just having a totally different tone.
I'll build on what Megan and Brennan have said. Internships are super important. Those are your learning opportunities to see, number one, do you really enjoy the type of work that your internship is on? There are so many things you can do in the food industry. So getting that hands-on experience, meeting people, knowing how to interact with people, super important. I knew where I wanted to do my internship. They didn't have an internship program. So I was a bit rebel and I wrote the note and I said, I would like to be your intern and I will do it for free. Can I be your intern? And they said, well, yes, but what would that look like? You're a scientist. I assume you want to work in the quality lab. And I said, well, I don't mind working in the quality lab, but my ideal internship, and I was making it up as I went along, is like, I think I should spend 1 week in every department throughout the summer. So 1 week in quality will be just fine for me. And they're like, oh, okay. And they hadn't really thought about how many departments there were there. And they're like, well, when you come in, do you mind punching a card? And I said, nope, I'll do whatever you want. Zero salary, but I'll do it. And then they said, well, tell us what departments you're interested in. And I'm like, front to back. That's the only way I'll know what this is all about. So absolutely agree. Internships, great experiences. It was really clear. And no offense to me, I didn't want to be in the quality lab. That's not where I wanted to spend my time. And so I got myself out of there pretty quickly by saying, and I also learned very quickly that I could not tie sausage like everybody else. So, it was fabulous experience. I'll do a little promo here. Phi Sigma advertises internships. And so whether you're on representing a company or you're looking for an internship, super important. This is how we promote food scientists, and that experience, good or bad, super important. I can tell you throughout my career, I've had interns, and we evaluate the intern. We see how they do. We have a running list, right? We might not have an open position for that intern, but they have a ranking. So when we have an opening, the first person we call is that intern, and they could have one or two other experiences then, but we knew we wanted them, and we're assuming they're growing, and they get put in that first candidate pool for us to call and say, hey, we have a job opening. Do you want to come back?
And when you end your internship, if you don't get the letter or the phone call of we want you back, don't feel bad about it. There's a lot of people that it's they call you 6 months later or 8 months later, and it may not fit at that time. But coming from Ohio State, and I'm sure Brendan experiences too, there's a lot of people who come back from internship with like, yeah, I've locked in a job for the first year. And you're like, I didn't. What's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Yep.
It's the experience you're going after.
Yep.
One of the other words I heard in there was mentors. In your internships, did you all pick up mentorships, or did you find a mentor in your job that helped you understand what industry was all about?
So I think mentorship, manager, I'm going to expand it to network, right? So understanding the people around you, the people before you to set things up, people behind you, what you were doing, how it impacted in front and behind, super important. I'd also add professional organization to that list of things that you want to get exposure to, belong to. You probably all belong to your food science clubs where you're at today, but there's lots of professional organizations out there. Culinary Institute, right? IFT, AMSA. There's a ton of professional organizations out there. And a mentor, always important.
I would say my first manager in my first internship, I still keep in contact with her. Maybe not as a mentor per se anymore, but I've spoken. She now works for a different company, and I have spoken for her in different avenues for different events and things like that. So I think it's also keeping those relationships, because the food industry is as big or as small as you make it. I work for one of the biggest food companies in the world, but the people also leave the company you work for and they go and work for another company. And if you have a good connection with those people, they're a good member of your network, they may call you up. One of my direct coworkers, her husband is in the military, and they were stationed in Italy. And when they came back to the States, she sent some emails to some contacts, and she was able to have a role back within the company very quickly. It wasn't exactly what she was doing beforehand, but somebody's like, absolutely, I'll hire you, because she had that connection in that network. So I think that's another thing is those connections aren't, and your professors can be part of your network. I was on a job interview a couple months ago, and somebody goes, oh, I see you're HACCP certified. I was like, yeah. They're like, who'd you take it with? And I say who I took it with, and they're like, oh, he's a good teacher. You're going to be good at HACCP. We're so, and then, they knew the professor I'd taken the class with, and they knew that they were. So those are people also that you need to, have those connections, because they have connections too.
Yeah, I can agree more with Martha and Megan. So, I mean, building your network, critical. Good mentorship is also critical. So, like in my only internship, I had a couple mentors. My manager for my internship actually ended up going back to Puerto Rico and teaching for a few down in Puerto Rico, and then before moving over to Europe. And the other mentor that I picked up, he's been bouncing around from job to job, but I still try and keep in contact with him, probably like once every couple months, send him an email, see how he's doing, just, catch up on life and what's been going on. And then my manager at Imbibe, I talk with her probably bi-monthly, especially like pointers, tips, and just that random check-in on, hey, how's life going? It doesn't always have to be about work. It's just being genuine and building just straight connections. And then I was lucky enough at Imbibe, I picked up a mentor, and I've now helped him take on a manager role. So it's been great to watch him grow and flourish and take on new challenges and kind of walk him through some difficult situations at his first job, and then watch him grow and blossom and negotiate into a manager role at his next job. So it's been a lot of fun to pick up a mentee.
And your mentor might not be different levels. It may be somebody who's the same level as you, but just in a different space within the company too. Is that's what I feel like, at least working in a big company. Like my mentors maybe a year or two ahead of me in career, but they're really we're the same level, we're the same space of our career too. And I'm helping them and they're helping me. It's that connectiveness of we're working through things together.
To add on to that, I'm currently mentoring somebody in marketing because they want to know more about innovation, right? So I'm not a marketing expert, but they recognize that they need to know more about innovation and product development. And so I'm like, yes, I'd be happy to mentor a marketing person about what food science is all about. So yeah, it happens in lots of different ways. You got to look for it. You got to ask for it. If you don't have a mentor, ask for one.
I just had this morning where a girl messaged me who's the lab tech who goes, can you just tell me about what it's like to work in a shared service? Because I work for the supplier quality shared service group rather than being in a plant. And she wanted to know about like what my life is different, because all of the plant people know about it is oh, those people all work from home offices. I don't know what they do all day, but they all work from home offices. And I'm like, I do a lot from my home office, all you all. Thank you very much.
One of the things I'm hearing here is as you talk about mentorship, and also go off subject for a second, that Phi Tau Sigma does have a mentorship program that we always are looking for mentors and mentees. But when you're talking about mentorships, you also are using the words network, and talk to the point where during school you develop your own network as you go through your classes, and that network can follow you out into industry or out into your career. And then in your career, you develop a whole new network. Can you all speak to developing a network?
I think it starts with, introducing yourself, but then listening to what other people do, right? So if it's a different professional organization, if you're in product development and you don't know anything about regulatory, ask questions. Ask them what their day-to-day is. If you want to know more about marketing or sales, or you want to learn more about the consumer is super important, right? We as food scientists, regulatory people, we feed the population today. And so what is going on? So you might have an insights person on your team that really tracks and follows very closely. So getting to know just a little bit more about everybody around you and then figuring out how that interaction works. It's asking questions, it's listening, and trying to understand how it all plays into, building a successful company, a successful network and organization around you.
This is going to sound silly, but the people you're writing group projects with right now in undergrad or in your graduate program, that's your network. When you go into industry, that's your first set of network. Because you're not all going to go to the same company. You're not going to all be in the same classroom in the fall, a year from now. Most of you are going to be in a different place. And those are people that you'll be able to bounce stuff off of, or they'll be able to help you out. And I think you didn't think about that when you're an undergrad with those people or when you're in graduate programs with them or a class with them, but they end up being those people that really do help your career out long term.
Yeah, and then like one of my top interview questions, like when I interview, is, when you're interviewing with different departments like quality, like as a product developer, I'm like, okay, what is my day-to-day interaction with your department? Like, how can I help you, and how are you going to help me? So building that cross-functional relationship, I think, is key. And I had great opportunities. A lot of, like, other than Abbott, I've been at smaller companies, so I had the ability to, hey, walk down the hall and, hey, what are you doing today, sort of thing. Like Martha said, don't be afraid to ask. Asking questions is key.
When you look at what you learned in academics versus what you do in industry, what are some of the things that you had to learn in industry that were never taught in academics? Megan, you want to lead off on that?
Absolutely. So in academics, you take a communications class, and at least my experience was I didn't take the communications class seriously. And what I mean by that is I didn't know how much communications was going to play into every single day of my life, whether it's a written word in an email or a chat message, or if it was a conversation with somebody. And that having communication styles and knowing your communication style. So I didn't realize that I had a very forward personality until I was in a review and somebody goes, "She's too forward. We don't want to work with her." And I was like, I didn't know that. And I had to work on being softer, being more malleable, and being able to be better communicator. And you don't talk about you talk about communications, but you're also talking about so much science and so much depth of those kinds of knowledge. That would be the first thing. And the other thing is as a person who spent their career in quality, is the assumptions that you make of everybody else understands everything you're talking about. And so, like, for myself, I assume everybody else is a food scientist and they understand that food's browning because of malleable browning and blah 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 blah. And you're in a room and everybody else is an engineer. They have no idea what you're talking about because they didn't talk about it in undergrad. They don't know the different microorganisms the way you do. So you're sitting here going over their head. And again, it goes back to communication. You have to be able to take all the knowledge you've put into your head over the last however many years and be able to communicate it back out.
Thoughts, Martha?
Yeah, no, I'd echo communication is super, super important. I think I would take it in addition to what Megan said is you become the subject matter expert and you need to know that, right? And as a subject matter expert or the SME, you have to educate and you have to be able to look at the audience, understand the people around you. What do they understand? What they don't understand? Do they need a high level message or do they want the detail? Start with a high level message. If they all say yes, 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 okay. If they say no, then you can get to the detail. And so if you're talking to the CEO, it's a high level message and he's going to say yes or no. If you're talking to your cross-functional teammates, some might say yes and some might say no. And so then you have to explain that out. And I think probably, and I say this tongue in cheek, but I mean it sincerely, is especially when you're early on in your career, you kind of expect people to tell you what to do, how to do it, where to go. But you have to remember you are that expert. And what you need to project is your leadership capabilities. And so transitioning from somebody telling you what to do into I can lead, I can promote, I can help the team grow faster, bigger, quicker is really difficult. Because I've seen people stay in their category. I just know this is all I know. This is all I'm responsible for. You're responsible for the company being successful, the product being successful first, but it is your company that you're working for. And so whether you do a new equipment adjustment, or you do an antimicrobial, or you do a new product, or you work on a GRAS statement, or the list is endless, but get out of this is just my window of expertise. Listen here, listen there, understand why they're asking questions, and then how can you move your organization forward? Yes, you are a scientist, but believe me, I reviewed graphics on a meat product and they had a shaft of wheat on the front picture because they thought it was pretty. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, we're introducing allergens, we're giving the wrong message, there is no wheat in this product. Why would you put wheat on the front picture of this product that we're introducing? I'm like, you can't, you shouldn't, don't do it. And they're like, what do you know about marketing? And I'm like, I clearly don't know anything about marketing, but you're misleading the consumer into thinking there's wheat in a product that has no wheat in it. So let's talk about this, okay, as an example, if that makes sense. So transition yourself from order taker to leader via question, via I want to do what's right for the company.
Yeah, one of the points that you brought up that really hit me was that you have to learn what they call elevator speech, where you're able to tell, like the CEO, distill down what you're thinking or what your product's about or what the subject matter is, but you have to get it out in like 10 to 15 seconds. The amount of time it takes an elevator to go from one floor to another, can you get out to a high-ranking executive exactly what you're doing or what your thoughts process is? I know I did have one reportee that the favorite thing I would tell him is, like, when I ask you what time it is, I don't need to have you tell me how to build the clock. You want to have an elevator speech, you want to talk, get everything out in 10 to 15 seconds. So, Brendan, I kind of interrupted you,
No,
but your
no,
thoughts.
that's good. But then also, like, piggybacking on stuff, like when you're talking to CEOs and stuff like that, it's like, don't be afraid. Uh, don't shy away from those conversations. Really dive into those, and that's how, again, growing your network. Just they're just another person, in the company. Yes, they have a big, kind of scary title, but they genuinely want to hear from you, and don't be afraid of their title just because they have a scary title. Like, just talk to them like you would anyone else.
The other thing is that I'm gonna play off that is know the facts that match your elevator speech, because they may ask a follow-up question, and if you don't know your facts well, then you look like you're a crazy person.
Yeah.
I've done that once. That one didn't work out for me.
Didn't do it again, right?
Nope.
Another thought process is what kind of challenges did you have when you first got into industry, or even after that? But what challenges did you have, and how did you overcome those? Um, Megan, you want to lead off for that?
I can lead off. So for me, challenges going into industry, like I said, my first role I was only in for 4 months out of industry, because they said, your salary, you're like a light switch. You're going to be here every hour we want you here. And so sometimes that was starting at 5 a.m. and it's working until 5 p.m. every single day of the week. Because that's what their expectations were. And so that was the first big challenge. And for me, that was a balance of that didn't work, and I didn't stay with the company long term because of that. When I came into Cargill, the first challenge, and this is going to sound like a really funny challenge, is the team I moved into after internship, they all worked from home 3 days a week. But Cargill's policy was I had to work for the company for 1 year before I was eligible for that to apply for an FWAA, which is a flexible work arrangement and agreement. So I spent a year being alone in a cubicle farm. So I didn't know what to do with myself. So I made friends with the accounting ladies, because they also sat in that cubicle farm, because there were no quality people. It was me by myself in this cubicle farm. So I learned a lot about golf in that first year, because the one woman on our team's husband had a standing tee time at 8:30 in the morning. And so I learned a lot about golf that year, because every day she'd tell me how her husband's golf game was. I know Brendan has a story that kind of goes along with challenges when he went into industry.
Yeah. So just managing friction between you and your manager. That was definitely my first challenge. And learning how to navigate those waters. It definitely challenging. But then, also you get to a point and you're like, at Newlyweds Foods, I was like, this isn't optimally what I want to do. So, always having the passion for beverages, that's when I hopped to Imbibe after, I did my time. And then there was even challenges getting to Imbibe. Like we had to wait out, we had a waiting period, like my offers essentially got put on hold. And then finally just had to go in and talk to, some of the co-owners, and they finally were like, we're just going to bite the bullet. Like, we just have to hire him and bring him in. But yeah, so like just, always know that it's not always going to be smooth sailing. You will have to overcome challenges, and they'll just make you stronger in the end.
That's true. I was gonna say, I think building trust or earning your respect is super important early on when you enter out of academics into the industry. And when I say building trust, the person out in the line or in the QA lab or in the regulatory department might have 25 years experience. And so they're going to say, what value are you bringing to the plate here? Not a lot initially, but it's your ability to catch on, learn, ask smart questions. If you're in a plant situation, that person knows how that line runs. And if there's a problem, they'll probably know the solution, and you're not going to know it. So what is the value? The value might be down the road, you could bring them an efficiency or a cost savings or something to make their work less tedious. And so it's building that. I hate saying, I have my degree, right? Megan, you talked about, first educated person in your firm. Having that degree doesn't mean you know more than anybody else in the room. And so showing the respect and building the trust with people so that they're willing to give you information that is very, very valuable. You're always going to be new at a job at some point in time. And so even when you have 20 years of experience, if you change jobs, you have a wealth of knowledge, but you don't know that company. You don't know how it runs. You don't know what the expectations are. So that kind of that give and take, I found to be really, really important. When you're walking in, whether you're a fresh graduate or walking into a new job 25 years down the road, really important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Martha. I mean, like walking in here to Synergy Flavors down here in Hamilton, Ohio, I had to go spend time on the floor with our compounders, talk with them, see how they're doing things. Like I was on the floor at 5 a.m. one time helping them batch a brand new product, and I'm in there helping, grab powder, throw it, like get your hands dirty,
Yes.
sort of thing, and that earn their respect. And that's what I find, is another key thing is, because then they'll come to you and be like, hey, I work closely with a lot of the compounders still. Like they'll bring me stuff that, hey, I need this, I need this batch corrected. I'm like, okay, fine, here, write down my numbers, here you go. I'm like, this is how you do it. And they'll come and be like, that worked perfect, I love it. So and then you see them in the hall, hey, how's it going? Small chit chat, just building your rapport with everyone is key. And doesn't matter what department, if they're hourly and your salary, like, you're still going to meet great people out on the floor that are fun to, talk with and get to know and be, part of your growing network.
Floor experience at Cargill. I was on the floor before Cargill. But at Cargill, I've always been in a corporate role. So I came in as a business unit level. So I worked across 13 sites from day one as a full-time Cargill employee. And the biggest thing was the same thing though, taking the time to know everybody's name. And what I mean by that is making sure I knew, Adrian goes with the site in California and Jarmy goes with the site in Charlotte, and knowing a little bit about each person made them feel like I knew about them. So that way, when they're in an audit, my phone's dinged a couple times during this. That's because one of our plants is being audited, and they're dinging me, and I keep typing letters on my keyboard to tell them who they should talk to because I'm on this call. Because they know to come to me when they can't find something. And that's part of the whole thing, is build the trust that people are going to come to you when they have an issue, because they know whether it's they need to have something reformulated or they have an audit going on. They know to come to you, and you're going to help them out.
One of the things that I've been hearing here is working 90 hours on the first job or being in the plant at 5 a.m. How did you all go from, say, a academic career where you're, 8 to 5 maybe, to where you really learned balancing your work-life relationship? Work-life balance is one of the key things out there that I think most people are concerned about. Could you talk to that point? Uh, Brendan?
Yeah, sure, I'll go. So one of my struggles is, fresh out of school, I worked long hours. I put my nose to the grindstone. Yeah, it's one of those things of, I learned it from my father. He didn't go to college. He's a, cabinet maker, successful cabinet maker now, but he would work long hours. He would make sure I get on the school bus, and he would come home late after dinner. And there were sometimes that he had to go back out to the shop and, do more work, after we had gone to bed. So it's one of the things of I inherited the trait of putting my nose to the grindstone. And then, upon having a family, it's one of those things of my wife has had to, reel me back in, like, hey, you're spending, like, especially when I was working for Abbott and doing work from home, it's like I would wake up early, I would sign on early, I would work well after her and my son had gotten home from, work and daycare. And it's like and then I would sign on again later in the evening. And it's like one of those things of, hey, you got to have your separation. Like, when the clock hits this time, you're done, you shut it down, and you just leave it until the next day, because it's always going to be there the next day. So that's what I had to just start doing. Like, literally shut it down. If I was working from home, I would hear the garage door open at like 4. I knew that was my signal. Hey, cut it off, done. And then the rest of the night was family time. And then you still have to build in your personal time too. So now what I do is, I have an early alarm, and I get up and do my personal morning routine before the kids are awake. And then I come into work, I work, cut it off. Obviously now I have there's nothing I can really do from home. I am on the bench 100%. So Monday through Friday, I'm 100% in my lab. And then, I work 8 to 4, cut off at 4, done, going home. And then the rest of the night is family time. No opening up my work laptop. I only take it home just in case a kid gets sick and I have to sign on and do emails and do what I can, development wise, remotely.
I wish I had that balance. And not that I don't have that balance, but I am very diligent about what my hours are. I grew up daughter of 2 veterinarians who work 7 to 7 Monday through Friday, 7 to 2 on Saturday. And then we're on call every weekend or every other weekend. So I really did experience that same work ethic. So coming into industry, it was the same thing. I didn't mind that the company wanted me to work 90 hours, except for that I couldn't go anywhere else. I couldn't not be in this little tiny town where the company was. And I really sometimes wanted to go home. And that really was what part fed me to come to Cargill. In Cargill, I came into a role and I was managing thousands of ingredients in my permanent role, but I was hourly. So I was told you can only work this many hours because that's what we have budgeted for. So I became very diligent about time because of that. And I've kept that diligence into my role now. But like Monday, my kids were sleeping in, which is weird. And so I was up at 5:30 and ready for the day. So I got on and checked email and talked to my contacts in Europe and made sure everything was good with their teams, because I was on at a time that was much more reasonable for them. I also have a group that I work with in Singapore. So once a month, I have to work in the evening, but I compensate myself for that. And I may compensate myself, and I may not look like I compensated myself, but I compensated myself in the fact that I walked out of this room and I put a little laundry in, or I emptied the dishwasher, or I went to an appointment and I didn't worry about it. But the one thing my first boss, if anybody ever has worked from home in their career, the one thing my first boss told me that was the best thing I was ever told was, wherever you're going to work from, make sure there is a door. And so you can close the door and work is done. So you're not going to look at that computer sitting on the corner of your island or the corner of your kitchen and be like, oh, I could just get back on real quick and I could just check if anybody needed me. You have to open the door before you do that. And that has been, for me, the thing that's brought me more balance.
Okay, so Brendan and Megan have a much better plan than I do. I'm truly on 24/7 or available 24/7. So what I try to do is a couple things. I have what I call my work friends, and my work friends, I try to make sure that I take a little bit of time, whether it's the beginning of the meeting or somewhere in the day. Hi, how you doing? Check in on them and have a little bit of social interaction versus this is work, 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 work. You have to build a little bit of social levity into your day wherever that works. And usually if you're on time to a meeting and they're waiting for somebody, then that's a check-in time on other people. I would also tell you, you need your social network outside of work, right? You gotta have those different places where you can spend your time. I like traveling for fun. And so I just tell people I'm in a different time zone. So just think about that before you call me. But I think it's up to you. It partly is what kind of job you're taking and what are the expectations. So I would say know the expectation for the organization that you join and know the expectation for the role that you're joining, because they vary a lot.
Like, I know Brendan has talked about, he didn't know he was going to be developing at third shift in the beginning, and nobody tells you that when you're interviewing that, oh, by the way, your run's going to be for me, it was, oh, by the way, you're going to start at 5 a.m. 3 days a week. Well, nobody mentioned that in the interview process. I found that out on like day 3 and I was like, oh, I guess I can start at 5 a.m. That's fine.
Yep, it's one of those things of being flexible for when I'm doing my development stuff and like going to plant trials and everything like that, like we started on third shift. So they're like, okay, well, we're going to start this about 1 or 2 a.m. So, kind of compensate yourself, like that and go from there.
I notice we're coming down close to the end, and there have not been any questions from the audience. If there are any questions out there, please type them in, and we'll bring them up to the panelists. Going further is one of the key questions, and I have it with my kids, is how long do you stay on a job before you either realize that you want to change because of career goals or because of your growth has come to not an end but has slowed down a lot? How long do you look at how long should you stay at a job, or how long should you take on a job? Megan?
So, like I said, I only stayed at the first company I worked for 4 months, and I knew at week 3 that it wasn't going to fit. So I knew very quickly that it wasn't going to fit, and so I opened my eyes to looking for other opportunities. But in Cargill, I've been with Cargill for almost 11 years. In that time, I've been in 5 different roles. And it's really been consistently growing roles. It's not been that I'm jumping around to different things. One time they sold the business I worked for. One time they restructured us. The group I worked for was disbanded. But there's also been roles that I've jumped to, and it's figuring out when it's best in your development. My current role I've been in for 6 years next week. It depends on what you're looking for. I love the work I do now. And so I don't have this huge, like, oh, I got to go for the next thing, but you're going to know when it's time to move because it's not fitting. The one thing I would say is it's okay to jump roles, but don't jump too quickly without giving things a chance. The company I worked for right out of the gate, I probably didn't give them a fair chance, but I was an hour and a half from home. And I just was like, I can't do this anymore. I don't like the way this is going. And I just didn't give them the chance. And I wish sometimes I would have given them another second chance to maybe have things be different.
Yeah.
I agree with Megan's comments. I think the other thing is, many times, especially with new employees or recent graduates, we say they look for, this is the ladder, and I go up, 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 up. This is the career path. I think you have to ask yourself a couple of questions. Do you want to be an individual contributor? Do you want to be a manager? Because those are two very, very different career paths. And then there's this term out there, squiggly careers, right? Today's isn't just a ladder approach anymore. I'd encourage you to look sideways, to the right, to the left. What other departments, what other pieces within that organization? How can you grow your expertise, your knowledge in helping the company grow? So it's not a promotion, promotion, promotion. It's, how can you, spread those wings, get a deeper breadth of knowledge across your company. I would tell you that my company, when we interview, we tell people we are a flat organization. So hear that. It's a flat organization. That means that you're not going to get a promotion, a promotion, a promotion. That's just not how we are. But we will give you the breadth of experience to do different things with that, and we pay well. So breadth of experience versus your title, what's more important to you? And then as a manager, when I'm looking at resumes, if you're jumping every 2 years or 3 years, I'm going to ask why. Sometimes there's a good reason, sometimes there isn't. I like progression within a company, like Megan said. She's been promoted, she's gotten different experiences. And then I'll tell you, one of my favorite interview questions is, if you have 5 different companies you work for on your resume because you've changed jobs every 2 to 3 years, what was your favorite? That's an easy one. Okay, what was your least favorite and why? And it's the and why and how they articulate that and why. Because if that and why is part of what they're going to be doing for me, then they're probably not a good fit for our organization. So really important to understand what you're getting into, give your company a chance, but also work to find the right fit within your company.
I noticed, oops.
Oh,
Go-
go ahead.
go-
Or you
go
want to
ahead,
go to that
Brendan.
question? That's fine. Like,
Yeah.
I spent 2.5 years, 4 years, 6 years. So before, joining Synergy. So like 2.5 years at Newlyweds, 4 years at Imbibe, 6 years at Abbott. So it's one of those things of, spent 2.5 years at Newlyweds because my ideal job was beverage. And then 4 years at Imbibe, and I had kind of run my course of really enjoying Chicago. So fun to visit, not for me to live there anymore. Came back to Columbus, spent 6 years at Abbott Nutrition. Started to kind of wear out the welcome of, okay, I actually want to be hands-on development, not so much, going into the lab every like once a month or once every 2 months sort of thing. And a lot of like, day-to-day desk work. And now I'm on the bench every day, loving it. So a year in, so it just getting back to kind of like my roots, like I was at Imbibe.
I see we had one question come in about how do you manage your continuous learning process? How do you keep up to date on things like regulations, certifications? Bottom line is how do you learn new areas to make your company succeed? Want to
For me, as
address
the
that?
quality person, this is easy. We work through, you get those regulation emails. So you sign up for the FDA's emails where they send out what the changes have been. And then you look for those different webinars and different speakers out there where you can learn more, go deeper, for somebody to teach you a little bit more about it. As Cargill, we bring in those speakers, or somebody else went to the meeting and they bring you the synopsis of what happened at the meeting. So attend all those different opportunities to learn and keep going and growing.
Yeah, from product development, regulations, those are handed down to me from quality, from regulatory. So I get told, hey, this has changed, we need to do this, or this is now our company's new standing on cold brew. Like we have regulation, even though there's no FDA regulation, we at Synergy Flavors have a regulation around our cold brew and what I'm allowed to call a cold brew concentrate. And then for like certification and everything, LinkedIn, and since I'm in the beverage industry, I go to Bev Industry and I look at what webinars they have. I'm signed up for their monthly newsletter or magazine release, online magazine. So it's just, what industry are you in? What's your role? And there's online resources that you can always go to.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is schedule the time. Take the time, block the time on your calendar for the webinar or for the educational piece, because it's too easy to say, oh, I'll read that later. I actually try to block time 30 minutes to read something new, right? Because it's too easy to go problem solving, day-to-day issues, what needs to happen. And so scheduling time for me is probably the biggest piece to this. And I'm jealous of my employees because they went to this meeting and they went to this webinar and they did that. And so I am like, give me the synopsis because I want to learn. I want to keep learning. And so schedule time, take the time to do it, understand what the company will support. And then if you want more, do it beyond. It's okay. Take some time to further your education in a different area. If you're interested in culinary, but that's not product development, then figure out how you get that culinary experience. Or if you want to know more about regulatory, or you want to know about engineering processing, talk to the engineering team and say, hey, what are your webinars? Where do you go? What can I read? What can I do? Who can I talk to? Can I shadow you for a day? If somebody will let you shadow them for a day, what a learning opportunity. And they're in your company. So lots of times nobody's going to question that. It's a good cross-functional pollination, which will probably be good for them, good for you. And just be prepared to let them shadow you on your daily routine.
And just know what your company's policy is on continuing education.
Yes.
Like, if they put dollars behind it, sign up for something, find something that strikes home to you and utilize that funding.
And not only your company's policy, but your manager's policy. So like my example would be, my manager is very supportive of Green Belt in Six Sigma because it does help us as a company, as long as my project was something that was going to help the team. So you have to also know what your manager view is. So like Cargill pays for lots of things, but my manager is like, let's do something that's going to help everybody else too, not just you get better. The whole team needs to get better out of this.
Okay, I see that we've come to the end of our allotted time, and I'd like to thank the panelists, Megan, Brendan, and Martha, for joining us today, and also like to thank everyone for attending. I think it's been a good, learning experience. As Fabian said at the beginning, look for it on YouTube. We'll be posting this so that you can go back and check your notes and what everybody was saying. So with that, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.